So, just like Joker, I finally gave Venom a watch last night. For the first time. Didn't even bother seeing it in theaters. Had no interest. The trailers did not impress me in the slightest. It looked uninspired and bland and very workmanlike. Just like another Sony product that we saw in the Amazing Spider-Man series. And this film had a really difficult time getting into theaters, and the production dragged on for years. And finally, in 2018, directed by Ruben Fleischer, starring Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, Jenny Slate, and Riz Ahmed, we finally have the Venom movie. To be completely real with you guys, I've never really been a big fan of Venom. A lot of Spider-Man fans say that he's their favorite Spider-Man villain. I get the appeal that Venom has with fans. He's the evil version of Spider-Man, like the doppelganger of Peter Parker. At least that's how I've seen it portrayed in various incarnations. Probably most famous was the 90s Spider-Man show, where Eddie Brock was voiced by Hank Azaria. In fact, he was so popular since his introduction into Marvel Comics that they put him in the introduction of the 90s show every time an episode came on. I have to admit, I did go along with the hype of Venom when they announced that he was going to be in Spider-Man 3 back in like 2005 or 2006, and they announced Topher Grace was going to play Venom. I was really, really excited to see that, and then we saw the movie, and well, we all know how that turned out. Then there was talk about Venom getting his own movie, and I was not into it at all. But a lot of fans want to see Venom. And to this day, they're still asking for him to be shown in a Spider-Man version, particularly the Tom Holland Spider-Man. And apparently they're going to try to connect this version to the MCU Spider-Man. More on that later, but I think that was a really, really stupid idea. And then as the trailers came out, like I said earlier, didn't really do it for me. And then there was this line.
You will be this honest, legless, faithless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
Mother of God. But I certainly didn't want this movie to fail. I wanted it to succeed because this is a popular character in the Marvel Comics. Of course I want to see a good movie out of this. But still, just from the trailers and then the Rotten Tomatoes score came out, didn't really give me much confidence. So I didn't even bother checking it out, and a lot of people were really astounded that I didn't see it. But finally, last night, I gave it a try. No. Besides maybe a couple of things and maybe a moment or two that I like, I thought this movie sucked. I'm not gonna beat around the bush on this one. I think it is a huge, huge disappointment. But it's been 2 years, and I feel like enough people have seen it by now, but in case you haven't, we're gonna go into some spoilers. The plot of this movie tells the story of Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, who's a reporter in the San Francisco area, and then he's given this interview with Carlton Drake, played by Riz Ahmed, who's this seemingly wholesome and very nice businessman. Eddie Brock's wife, Anne, who works for the company, receives an email in regards to human trials which are being used on symbiotes that they got from outer space. He decides to run with the story and confronts him about it during the interview, which leads to him being fired, and his wife, or fiancée Anne, decides to dump him. Fast forward to 6 months later, Eddie's living in a rundown apartment behind on his rent, trying to make some kind of money, finding any job that he could find. And then he receives a visit from one of the scientists that works with Carlton Drake, played by Jenna Slate. He sneaks into the laboratory, discovers one of the homeless people that he's befriended, and then he gets the symbiote on him, and therefore we have our movie, Venom. And that's probably the best part of this movie. The dynamic between Eddie and Venom, where this voice is screaming inside his head, trying to get him to do something that he wants him to do, and then you wonder, is he gonna go along with it? Is he not gonna go along with it? And for the most part, it's probably the most entertaining aspect of the movie, and it's more like a vocalization of what we saw in Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock, where the arms are giving him the ideas in his head, but we don't really hear what they're saying. This one we do. And as far as Venom's look, he looks good. No spider webs, and he doesn't shoot the webs. But for the most part, he looks fine. He looks like Venom. Not much else I can say. Albeit the CGI is a little bit noticeable in certain shots. And Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, he's Tom Hardy. A really, really great actor. Inception, Warrior, Dunkirk, The Dark Knight Rises, Mad Max Fury Road, The Revenant. The guy's one of the best actors in the business right now. Unfortunately, as some people pointed out, that he tends to mumble quite a bit in his movies. This one, it's not that different. It's basically... he's basically the teacher that we hear in the Peanuts specials, the wah 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 wah. I'm serious, he might as well have been doing that in certain scenes, because legitimately I couldn't understand what he was saying some of the time. What's this guy on me, man? What are you doing? Why would we do that? And some of the action scenes are not bad. There's a street chase where he's on a motorcycle evading Carlton Drake's thugs, and another one where he takes on the SWAT guys in the building that he breaks into. Those are decent, I would say. And Jenny Slate, she's okay. She's a fine actress, but in this movie, she's got nothing to do. And that goes with the rest of the actors, which this movie, well, it kind of sucks. I'm sorry to say that, guys, and I know there's people out there who like it. And if you watch it with a perspective of like a dumb action movie, it's fun, it's okay, it gets the job done, but as someone who expects more out of a movie like this about Venom, and you see certain hints of like what it could have been, this was a huge letdown for me. Like, the villain, played by Riz Ahmed, who was really good in Nightcrawler and okay in Rogue One, he doesn't work as the villain. I think he was poorly written and very standard and just kind of hollow. They try to portray him as this angry businessman who has this really crazy mixed up view of like how they should fix the world, trying to stop it from global warming or something, but he doesn't really sell that. And like I said, that's also partly due to the writing of the character as well. And Michelle Williams as Eddie Brock's love interest, boring and uninteresting. And at one point, she actually becomes She-Venom, saving Eddie Brock from those thugs. And we also get her kissing him while in the symbiote. I mean, what a great scene. The rest of the action scenes are uninspiring. It just feels standard and very conventional. In the final climactic battle between Riot and Venom, a huge, giant CGI blur. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work. Now, I know that this is probably not a fair comparison, but for anyone who complains that the MCU relies on CGI and green screen too much, you're not wrong, but at the very least, for the most part, the MCU knows how to use CGI appropriately and make it feel like it's actually seamless. This one, not in the slightest. And also, the look of this movie feels very overly digital. I swear to God, certain shots where like Eddie Brock's like pressed up against the wall, where the symbiote's pinning him to the wall, I'm not exaggerating. I literally thought I was watching a stereo commercial. There's also the bluish tint in certain scenes, and they're supposedly trying to connect this to Tom Holland. I call BS on that. I think they were literally trying to revive the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man in some way. Maybe it could happen with the Spider-Verse movie. That would make a lot more sense. But if you're gonna try to tell me that this is connected to the Tom Holland Spider-Man, no, not buying it. In fact, this whole movie feels like a giant product for Sony, just like the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Like, everything feels fabricated, like it just came off of an assembly line. Now, certain movies, you can tell that it's a certain product of a studio, whatever the studio might be, but you would at least expect there to be some kind of energy or some kind of flair. This one, maybe a couple of things here and there. I don't know if it's all Ruben Fleischer's fault or the writers, or if it's Sony interfering. I'm willing to bet that Sony is the one that really called the shots on this one, because clearly, after watching this movie, they haven't learned their lesson, and I don't think they ever will. But then we get a mid-credits scene where we meet Cletus Cassidy, played by Woody Harrelson. And in my mind, when I heard that he was playing him, I thought, great! Because Woody Harrelson, in all the movies that I've seen him do, there's just this eccentric, psychotic vibe that he gives off. It's like, you take one look at him and you're like, you got issues, man. And as far as this line,
when I get out of here, and I will, there's gonna be carnage.
like, seriously? Really? Maybe if he just wrote the word carnage on his cell wall, that I think would have been a lot better. So Venom is not a horrible movie by any means. Tom Hardy's good, and the dynamic between him and Venom is not too bad. Some decent action, and Jenny Slate's fine, like I said. Other than that, there's nothing else redeeming about this movie. Oh yeah, and the scene where he goes into the lobster tank.
Oh, what the f am I watching here?
I know I really came off really negative here, but this movie is just, I'm sorry, it just didn't work for me. If you like it, if you had fun with it, hey, that's all well and good. I'm not gonna judge you for it. It's just, for me, I expect more out of a movie this, and I didn't get it. So those are my thoughts on Venom. Thank you guys for watching. What are your thoughts on the movie? Do you love it, like it, think it's alright, or do you hate it? Whatever the case is, comment below and tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you all very soon.